fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, has a new book called The Coming Revolution, Struggle for Freedom in the Middle East, which we want to get to in just a moment. Dr. Phares, good morning.
Good morning to you, gentlemen.
I wanted to obviously ask you a couple of questions about your book, but obviously the situation with Antonio Martinez, a.k.a. Mohammed Hussein, kind of preempts that. I'm just curious to know, because we talked about in the first hour, how does a young guy, an American citizen, who at 15 is attending Laurel High School, is quiet, but doesn't seem to be affiliated with any kind of terrorist or jihadist or troublesome organization, become Mohammed Hussein in just 5 years? Is it just the Internet, or is there some other influence that you would think of?
See, the Internet, Facebook, these are tools of communications. It could have been a voyage, a journey to somewhere else. It could have been a family situation. I mean, whatever the reasons are and whatever the tools are, there's one thing in common when it comes to American-born non-Muslims who convert. It's who oversees the conversion. This is something that the government and the legislator have not yet focused on, because one thing in common for all those who converted and became jihadists is that those who oversaw the conversion are or have been spreading jihadism in the mind of these individuals. Otherwise, you have many other people, many Americans from various ethnic groups who convert, who do not become jihadists. So there is something wrong in the mechanism. Somebody at some point in the stages of conversion has introduced the idea, the doctrine of jihad in his head.
In your view, though, is that something that can just be conveyed via the Internet, watching videos of Osama bin Laden or Anwar al-Awlaki, or is there a human contact that usually enters in to a successful conversion? I mean, we had a mom whose son had attended Laurel High School, Antonio Martinez's high school, over 10 years ago, who said there were Muslim groups that came to school. We were not aware that there was any conversion going on. But in your experience, does there need to be a person and not just a virtual contact to make this work?
Let me explain one point. The conversion process, meaning bringing an individual who's not from the Muslim faith into the Muslim faith, there is a component in it, and that component has to be introduced by another individual. You cannot figure it out by yourself.
Okay.
I mean, if you go and read a text and then want to convert, you at least have to ask questions. At least you have to interact. Now, if that jihadi component is done via Internet, or there's a guy in the neighborhood in the next zip code who would do this by phone, by meeting, that is the difference. It doesn't have to be only by Internet or by reading, but there must be at some point an interaction, a question asked. What do you mean by that? If I die on behalf of jihad, where would I go? Okay. You know, all these little important questions have to have an interaction.
Are those who recently convert to Islam, especially those who are American-born or American-raised, are they more likely to pick up jihad, violent jihad, than another who is Muslim?
Not really. I mean, as I said earlier, if you convert, if you are, you know, in one religion, say Christian, Jewish, or even atheist, and convert to Islam through the Sufi doctrine, meaning non-jihadi doctrine, or if no jihadi element is in it, meaning if you ask the question and the person who is guiding you to go to the new faith, make sure that there is no militant interpretation. You just go safely and you become, because there are hundreds and thousands of people who convert and convert back. But again, the most important thing is who is overseeing the conversion. In the cases that we've seen, like the Jihad Jains and many of the unfortunate jihadi conversion in the past 3 years or 2 years, we've seen that not only there is a conveyor, but it's the same doctrine. The way they interpret these actions for jihad are influenced by one source.
All right. How many Antonio Martinez's are out there? How many Mohammeds, who was arrested recently in Portland? We had another kid in Oakton, Virginia, who wanted to go against Comedy Central because of their cartoon against the Prophet Muhammad. How many of those guys are out there who want to take arms against America? Do you know?
I think this is the most important question in national security today.
Wow.
In my book 5 years ago, Future Jihad-Terror Strategies Against America, in a couple of those chapters, I have projected that the phenomenon is mushrooming. And let me call it the war room, which is overseeing these entrapment into jihadism, which is a Salafi jihadi war room, is trying to make sure that every city in America, every neighborhood in America has a jihadi presence. Should they be individuals? When individuals connect, they become a cell. When cells connect. Look, for example, the North Carolina cell. There was one individual who converted his own family or his own kids and then went hunting for other jihadi formed, and that was the one at the Fort Dix 6, about 7 individuals. But you have also lone wolves. But lone wolves only because they don't want to have multiple people. But if you look at the big map of America and over the past 2 years, I call it now urban jihad, meaning every city, every area has now an individual or a group moving to become a cell.
All right, now let me turn to your book, because you've got a book called The Coming Revolution, in which you talk about something we have not explored at all on this program, and I haven't heard it anywhere else as well, and that is the anti-jihad movement, the democracy movement that is growing up in some of the Middle Eastern countries that are considered to be cells of Islamic fundamentalism. Could you talk a little bit about that? Is that growing enough to the point where perhaps the U.S. should be supporting these efforts, and could it actually overthrow some of these fundamentalist regimes?
Absolutely. If you look at different totalitarian regimes throughout the 20th century till now, you see that in every country, such as the Soviet Union, the Eastern Bloc, or before that, fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, you have the totalitarian ideology, but it also has its opposition. And one of the failures of our so-called war on terror was not to look enough and find and partner with those forces. I mean, the biggest manifestation that is so clear that every citizen can see was a year ago when you had 1.5 million Iranians demonstrating in the streets of Tehran. What is that? These are the anti-jihadists. 60% women, 65% of them are young, under the age of 18. They are against the Ayatollah. They are against jihadism. Before that, 5 years ago, 1.5 million people in the streets of Beirut, 80% of which, were also youth. What's happening in Sudan, the self-determination movement in the south, is important. What will be happening in a few months from now in Algeria, the Berber minority is also rising against the jihadists, and also, the most important, online. In as much as we are finding jihadists online, we are finding on Facebook, on YouTube, everywhere, counter-jihadists, people who are for democracy. The problem is that they don't have the microphone, they don't have the funding, while the others have the Wahhabi petrodollars and have the visibility. And the unfortunate thing, have the actual visibility provided by the international media. The international media gives more importance to the jihadi than to the counter-jihadi.
And based on what I saw in Iran, they're also not getting the full support of countries like the United States when they do rise up.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the difference on how we behaved with dissidents of the Soviet Union without having to go there or do anything, just the visibility, how we supported the Lech Walesa, the Solidarity in Poland, Václav Havel, and all the other dissidents. And when we had 1 million or more people in the streets of a country which is going nuclear, which is funding terrorism and jihadism around the world, our policy was we don't want to meddle. I mean, this is not meddling. This is basically being with international human rights, and we failed, I think.
Dr. Phares, great to have you on the program.